This is a true story. It takes place in Germany, in the middle of the green heart of Europe, on a little tributary of the Rhine. Here, when I was a child, began the discovery of the fairy tale that, in the course of my life, was to prove to be reality. It's my story. These are my observations. And, at last, I can produce evidence. At first sight, there's nothing unusual about this little river. But I know a secret of which, as a young child, I had already had a presentiment. Here, living inconspicuously, is one of the most fascinating birds of our untamed homeland, the kingfisher. Since antiquity, myths have been attached to the azure blue kingfisher. I've felt a special affinity for this so exceptionally shy little bird with the long beak since I was young. It's never diminished, especially not since I became a nature filmmaker. It had long been my intention to get close up to the kingfisher with my camera. I wanted to watch it hunting, how it dived into the water and caught little fish, how it dug its nest burrow, and especially how the life of the kingfisher proceeds. I wanted to have a picture of it, to document it, so close and complete as had never been done before. Finally, I could grasp the opportunity. It was on offer in a wonderful river landscape with good living conditions, not only for kingfishers. Here, I want to stalk with my camera in the hunt for the flying diamonds. Here, where the river rises, I experienced my first acquaintance with the kingfisher during my childhood. Its colourful plumage glittered like crystal in the sun. It shone so radiantly that I can still remember it to this day, and its greeting is still a cherished memory. I found a small blue feather. I kept it for a long time and swore to myself and to the bird that we would meet again. That was years ago. My first job as a wildlife cameraman involved the kingfisher. I built an aquarium and waited to see if a kingfisher would come and fish in it. It was a long time before he finally came. Would he overcome his shyness and dive into the basin? He did. My heart was beating with excitement. This shy creature has fascinated me my whole life long. Every contact increased my insistent desire to observe the kingfisher, to capture his life with the camera. Once again, summer had reached its peak. Approaching autumn could already be sensed, and I still hadn't found the ideal location for myself and my camera. Autumn is the beginning of a difficult time for the kingfisher. Ice and snow are the kingfisher's enemies. When they cover the water, he must leave his home and move to where the water is still open. My patrols along the river were reduced to a minimum over the next few weeks due to storms and the bitter cold. And one day, a sad discovery. Winter is truly the enemy of the kingfisher. It had exacted its tribute. The enemy of ice is spring. Its first breath presages the change in nature. Its first messengers push up from the earth. With the spring, I encounter the kingfishers again. They have survived the harsh winter. Is it the same pair as last year? I observe them for days from a safe distance. I want to be sure that they're settling in this spot. Some months later, everything is ready. I erect my camouflaged film equipment close to the nest site. From here, it must be possible to observe unnoticed, to film. My first principle is to be there intensively, so as to share in the family life of the kingfisher. It's not easy to distinguish between him and her. They both have the same colourful plumage. So this is him, Mr. Kingfisher. His beak is a single dark colour. In contrast to Mrs. Kingfisher, who has a visible distinguishing mark, a slight reddish tinge on the lower beak. During the breeding period, bright red feet distinguish the adult birds, while the chicks are dark brown. And I can also recognise them by the light spot on the tip of the beak. I want to learn all about them and resolve that next spring I will document their first activities even earlier. The river changes constantly. No 2 days are the same. Autumn, winter, and again a new spring. I've decided March is the right moment to start intensive filming. This is when the kingfisher's territorial disputes are at their height. Problems with neighbours, or even their own children from last year. The buzzard up above poses no danger to the kingfisher. But intruders and competitors of their own kind can be a threat. This is the start of the most exciting season for the kingfisher. Stress and strain are constant. It's about the best places for fishing, about the best nesting places, and it's about finding the best partner for the coming breeding season. Anyone who isn't on his guard now will probably lose out on his partner and his territory. The female kingfisher is in a flurry of excitement. A strange male has come close to her. The stranger has presumably encroached too far on her territory. She threatens him with loud warbling calls, with spread wings, even with an attack. Her own partner hurries to defend her against the intruder. The female is extremely agitated. In the frenzy of the moment, I lose my overview. Are there suddenly 4 kingfishers? Has a strange female become involved in what's going on? Everything is happening so fast. And suddenly, it's quiet again, as though nothing had happened. In the clay face above, I recognise the start of a nest burrow in almost the same place as last year. Underneath lies a pile of freshly ejected earth. So this is where it will all take place. The male has chosen this spot. But he still can't get a grip with his feet in the soil. He has to try in flight in split seconds to dig out small pieces with his beak. Again and again, new efforts, new attempts. Now it's the female's turn. Mr. Kingfisher takes the opportunity to go fishing. Kingfishers always live on the water and feed virtually exclusively on small fish which they catch at lightning speed. The female was hoping the fish was for her. Disappointed, she begs her partner for the booty, but to no avail. He flies off to fish again, this time in a different spot. Patiently, the female awaits his return. Where is he then? This time the fish is for her. It's a kind of attentiveness to the bride, binding the partners together. Hardly has she swallowed the fish than the male has come back again, this time with obvious intent. She repels him vigorously. Well, if you don't want to, not yet. The male enjoys a quick bath. Kingfishers are scrupulous about preening their feathers. Several times a day I watch them bathing, particularly when they're building and lining the nest. Then their feathery dress is especially stressed. It must be washed clean and then greased so that it doesn't become waterlogged when diving. Now the female shows him she's ready, an unmistakable sign of belonging together in partnership. A few days later, I return to my observation post. In the meantime, the kingfishers haven't been idle. They've worked diligently on the tunnel leading to the nest. It'll be 60 to 80 centimetres long, and at the end will be the actual nesting chamber. They use their feet to push the soil back to the opening and eject it. A week later, the nest is finished. In the final days, that was a job for the male. The female only comes out for a few moments. I reckon the first eggs will be laid soon. From time to time, the male comes to check up on the nest. Even now, a rival could still contest his territory. The female leaves the nest for a brief moment, only to immediately disappear back inside. Has there been a misunderstanding? The male indicates his readiness to take over the next shift in the nest. But the female too wants to go back into the burrow, even though there isn't enough room for both of them, and immediately there's a family squabble. But it all ends amicably. Their respective roles have been sorted out. The female takes over the inside work and prepares to lay the eggs. Spring approaches. Every day the concert of feathered singers becomes more intensive. Everybody sings along. Everything becomes more colourful, and blossoms denote the end of winter. Even so, the sun hasn't conquered yet. For 2 days and nights there has been uninterrupted rain. The river has swollen to a torrent. For the kingfisher, there is no possibility of catching fish in the churned up, dirty water. The river has come close to washing away my hide, but once again I've been lucky. And a few days later, I'm back in there again. Everything looks the same as before. There's nothing to indicate the recent high water. The kingfisher pair have also survived unharmed. The male is keeping watch close to the nest site. For a few seconds, the female interrupts her brooding. I can't explain her strange movements. Is she unsettled? Why does the male leave his post? Have they both spotted the same thing? She seems to have recognized the danger. The sparrowhawk overhead, one of her worst enemies. The sparrowhawk raises its young in the adjacent forest. As a renowned hunter of birds, it would gladly catch a kingfisher. This is nature. Eat and be eaten. The sparrowhawk eats the kingfisher eats small fish. They are now the right size for him and are readily available in large shoals. In my hide, I'm closer to the kingfisher than ever before. Immediately in front of my camera, life runs its course. Attack. I watch as it dives into the water, as it kills the captured fish, and finally skillfully turns it round in its beak, as it speeds over the water like an arrow, and disappears into the nest with the fish. I can watch it bathing too. At last, the moment has come for which I've had to wait so long. As a child, I wished for it, dreamt of it. As an adult, I've worked towards it, deliberately and patiently. Decades later, I discover that this bird world still fills me with unending delight. Finally, the kingfisher sits really close and totally trusting in front of me. I can see every little detail, every feather precisely. The sun's light is at its best, making the plumage gleam like colourful diamonds. My camera runs and runs. I see every single movement, happy moments. Nothing must come between us now. I'm tense, concentrating, avoiding any movement, any sound. It sits very close before me, near me. I hold still. I'm trembling with joy. The innumerable hours of preparation, of waiting, are forgotten. Now I'm savouring the moment. For the kingfisher, this is a normal day. He searches for booty for himself and his offspring, for whom it kills the fish with a powerful blow before handing it over. The fish is served head first to the young birds, never against the direction of the scales, otherwise it wouldn't slip whole down their throats. The size of the captured fish makes me realise how much the chicks must have grown already. The parent birds arrive at the nest alternately. Fish after fish is brought and taken into the burrow. A true feeding marathon is in progress. From time to time, the parents take little breaks to fortify themselves. Kingfishers always swallow their catch whole, head first. All indigestible remains, for example bones, will be regurgitated as pellets after a short time. Mother Kingfisher is begging for a fish again, a sure sign that she's preparing for the second clutch. Kingfishers breed several times a year. The broods overlap. While the father looks after the chicks of the first clutch, the mother is already sitting on the next brood. The male kingfisher dives several times in his hunt for fish. He's not always successful. Then he has to try again. But where is he off to this time? That's not the way to his nest. But is it the wrong direction? A second female kingfisher is sitting there begging. Is this kingfisher leading a double life with a second mate? In which case he needs to look after both and the offspring of both broods. No easy task. Most kingfishers live monogamously, but from time to time you do find double pairings. One male, two females, or one female living with two males. It's rare, but not impossible. Should the kingfisher with two females also have a brood to care for, he would be endlessly catching fish. Nature only allows for partner swapping in exceptional circumstances. If one of the two should drop out during the breeding period, kingfishers will quickly form new partnerships. But that doesn't seem to be the case here. Several times a day, the kingfishers take a break while they thoroughly clean their plumage. They have to, for every feed requires them to squeeze between the narrow loam walls. Coming back out, their feathers act as a broom because the young simply leave their droppings in the passage. So the parent birds have to keep bathing and greasing their plumage. Even before the chicks of the first brood leave the nest, Father Kingfisher is seeking the right spot for the next burrow. First, he tests the consistency of the soil. Only after he's pecked out a little cavity can he cling on. Until then, he has to use his wings for balance, like a hummingbird. Often, small stones and roots are so entwined that he breaks off his attempt and, after a short pause for breath, looks for a more suitable spot, hopefully with better luck. A glance into the first nesting chamber shows that the plumage of the youngsters is already virtually complete. Soon they'll be able to fly away, normally between 23 and 28 days after they've hatched. Perhaps tomorrow or the next day, if my calculations are correct. It's the beginning of June. Since early morning, the parent birds have been keeping a lookout for enemies to ensure there's no danger. I'm right. Close to the nest, I discover the first chick in the branches. On the opposite bank, directly in front of my hide, is a second one. And not far away from him perches a third. What's wrong with this little one? Has he injured himself in his first attempt to fly? Made a belly landing? Still unsure and clumsy, the other young birds try to find safety. But something's not right with this youngster. If it doesn't fly soon and find cover, its helpless fluttering will attract the attention of predators. All the young birds are still relatively unsure. Their fluttery attempts at flight have not gone unnoticed. They've attracted the attention of a sparrowhawk. The adult kingfisher, too, is aware of the danger. However, he's powerless. He can't protect his young. But he can warn them. So he keeps flying close to the young birds. What looks like an attack is a demand to fly after him, and immediately. With their last strength, the weak offspring attempt to get to safety. Mr. Kingfisher has drawn the attention of the sparrowhawk to himself. From the protective forest, the predatory bird watches, argus-eyed, the scene on the water. Even more violently than before, the adult kingfisher attacks his offspring in the hope that it will finally follow him and find cover. But the youngster thinks it's all a game and steadfastly refuses to follow. The sparrowhawk still hesitates. What is it waiting for? Which of the youngsters does it have in its sights? At last, the young bird understands. The onslaught is a sign of the gravest danger. Sanctuary at the last moment, at least for this little creature. Will he be saved too? I have my doubts. Already he faces new danger. A grass snake sees his helplessness as a chance for booty. The snake is out of luck. Once their sibling has escaped from danger, the other youngsters want their parents to feed them. They all beg. They each want the fish. Unlike in the nest, out here the adults are reluctant to give the youngsters food. The more hesitant the adults are, the greater the spur to hunt for themselves. But it's always difficult at first. Catching fish needs training. The young kingfisher will soon realise that a piece of wood like this is not a fish and won't be filling. Nevertheless, the little branch provides a pleasant way of passing the time. But it's not suitable for eating. With a fish in its beak, the adult tries to entice a youngster to come near. But he's waiting for the fish to be brought to him. It's only with the aid of food that the adult can entice his young out of the nest. He flies round the youngster, challenging him to follow. Suddenly, the sparrowhawk is back. Renewed deadly danger for the young kingfishers. The sparrowhawk seems to have already picked one out and intends to take it by surprise with a lightning attack. At the last moment, the young bird spots his attacker and flees its sharp claws. These two have also stayed safe. The life of many kingfishers ends in the first few days after leaving the nest, even before it's really begun. This isn't only because of the sparrowhawk. More than half the young birds die in their first year as a result of predators, high water, and human influence. I observe the young kingfishers intensively over the next few days, and am amazed at the progress they make in the art of flying. Mother Kingfisher has taken them upstream to a spot where the water is quieter, with a plentiful supply of food. Here they'll practice their fishing technique. This is also necessary and, like all new beginnings, difficult. For me, as observer, it is astonishing. The parents give them absolutely no instructions. They're back in the old territory, making sure conditions are favourable for the next brood. The youngsters from the first brood are becoming more and more successful at fishing. Soon they're all good anglers. However, they don't only need to be skillful at catching fish, but also at eating them. Anyone who doesn't think his gullet is full enough, who isn't satisfied with little fish, must learn how to swallow such a large lump without choking. Meanwhile, the adult birds are both sitting in front of the deserted nesting burrow, maintaining a respectful distance. Once again, I watch as the male flies toward the other female kingfisher. Is he living together with her too? While the first female is in the nest, attending to the future of the offspring, he is evidently conducting a seasonal marriage with the second female. Mr. Kingfisher is certainly busy digging out a new nesting burrow. The bits of soil on the beak of his second partner show that she's involved in the excavating too. All my efforts notwithstanding, despite all my observing, I'm not entirely sure that it's actually the same male in both cases. This possibility can't be excluded, since bigamy is not unusual for kingfishers, even though many live monogamously. The sun has been scorching the valley for days. Every creature is suffering in the heat. I'm suffering too in my hide. Not a drop of rain has fallen for weeks. In the almost dried-out mud of the river bank, I can see the tracks of other animals whose home is here, such as the common sandpiper, a member of the snipe family, seldom found here, or the wagtail, a close relative of our water wagtail who prefers to live on riverbanks. The grey heron, an angler with unlimited patience. Or the water ouzel, just like the kingfisher, a flying underwater hunter. There's a little water in the river now. In the remaining pools, the young fish are easy prey for the young kingfishers. But the fish don't let themselves be caught that easily. Since adult kingfishers don't run a school and stop caring for the brood after about a week, the latter have to fend for themselves, even though some of them are still insecure hunters. Food envy is widespread. One tries to steal the booty from the other. They're like a pack of hounds. And as if that weren't enough, suddenly the parents too become aggressive towards their offspring. They drive them from the territory, as though they were a completely foreign species. Their attack is a clear sign the young birds can no longer stay here. By human standards, a radical expulsion. This little one is still begging, in vain. It can take days before the chicks accept the new situation. From now on, they are definitely left to their own devices. The aggression of the parents towards their children becomes increasingly obvious. More and more frequently, the parents attack their young and drive them away. But that's nature. There's no place for the young birds. They must find a new home for themselves. Often they spend days confusedly looking for a place to stay. Wherever they go, the spot is already occupied. it's difficult for the young kingfishers to find a place of their own for the future. Peace has returned to their original home, but only for a while until the next brood is fledged. Nor do the adult birds escape family life unscathed. Their beautiful plumage suffers from the stress of rearing the young. Kingfishers can have up to 4 broods a year, so there's not much time left for rest, for bathing, for preening their feathers. I'm taking a break, at least for this season. There is still so much to discover in the nature that surrounds us, that we are part of. The long, hot period is followed by rain at last. The rain can't do the kingfishers any harm, but if the water is too disturbed, it's hard for the young birds to find fish. Soon after the rain, life on the river is back to normal. Even if initially I'm bidding farewell to their kingdom on the river, where I've experienced so much beauty and excitement in the lives of the kingfishers, my curiosity is still not entirely appeased. The flying diamonds continue to attract me, irresistibly. One day I shall come back here to our river.